What defines you? Not as in you personally, but the very concept of who you are. Is it the biological makeup of who you are, such as the neurons or brain waves or chemical composition? Or would it be a more philosophical approach, the subjective person? ReZero Arc 6 tackles this question. It uses Subaru's amnesia as a means to not only show Subaru exactly how other people view the concept of Subaru, but also to have Subaru take an objective look at his subjective person. Sounds kind of like an oxymoron, I know. Subaru's identity is broken, and he is unable to recall the person everyone thinks he is. And in that instance, the identity known as NATSUKI Subaru ceases to exist. ReZero takes the position that without personal identity, without your lived memories and experiences, you are not the same person. Arc 6 breaks Subaru in two: the objective experience that his close friends view him as, and the identity of Subaru. It dangles the option of him killing his friends to use the Book of the Dead to truly see how they feel about him. But in reality, this option is a red herring. Subaru does not need to peer into the books to find out how they feel about him, as Arc 6 in its entirety is his chance to do so, to see exactly how he has inspired the people around him, and how his actions look to a third party, to see what makes himself so amazing. Not only does this arc tackle a big philosophical question, it also leaves us with more questions than answers when it comes to the narrative of ReZero. That is enough philosophy for now. Let's just get straight into the summary of Phase 5. Subaru resets again, vowing to save not just Shala, but every single person in this tower, to overcome every obstacle and achieve absolute victory, just like always, right? He uses Corleones to take on Ram's physical burdens, and goes with Julius and Betty to rush to Reed versus Roy. The situation pans out about how one would expect, as Reed is basically tossing Roy's body around and making a fool of him, which pisses off Julius. The Knight of Vanity is quite upset at Reed for breaking the social norm of knightlyhood, and playing around with the life of the defeated. Reed pummels the party, and allows Roy to eat his name so that he can take over his physical form. The party tries their best to get the better of Reed, but they of course fail, as Reed rushes in disgust of Subaru's circumstances and slashes his chest to kill him. Subaru in his dying breath says that he will reach him, and that this is only count 1. Reset. When he gets back up, he changes plans and heads to the Lei fight instead, which goes about the same as last time, except when Betty tries to attack Lei, he dashes around to strike her until Subaru steps in to take the attack on her behalf. Lei points out Subaru's intent to reset, and Subaru flips him off and tells him to die. Count 2. Subaru then finds himself with Melee on the back of a sand earthworm, but of course, Shala transforms and they both end up dead on the bottom floor. Count 7. He goes back to the Lei fight with Julius this time, and Lei escapes. Reed comes down and kills the party. Count 15. Subaru is completely numb. Just like the version of him in Arc 4, he has grown to be comfortable with using throwaway lives, if it even gives him the potential of an edge over a single catastrophe occurring in this tower. He is more or less disconnected from every loop, seeing each life as a means to an end until he achieves absolute victory. That is until Betty notices his ragged state and tells him to stay in the library. He is no Superman who could do everything. Always frantic about what lies in front, getting hurt for everyone's sake, Subaru is just a normal boy, and she will handle the rest for him. He of course refuses. He has to do it all. He is the only one who could do it all, but when he tries to stand up, he collapses once more. Because what Subaru doesn't do anymore is everything on his own. What he and Betty do is cover what is lacking. That is why he doesn't have to do everything alone. That is Natsuki Subaru. As his comrades leave him, he is dumbfounded. What changed? What could have possibly spurred a massive change in a weak little crybaby? Did he meet someone, or attain an unbelievable power, or have an experience he couldn't even imagine? He needs to know what made Natsuki Subaru the objective person that people perceive, and he begins to hurt himself in hopes to bring out the person he wishes he was, because he can't do it. He cannot save. He activates Corleones, something he has done many times in his library. However, in those previous attempts, he was tunnel visioned, and he looks over towards a faint light on the bookshelf and pulls out a book titled Natsuki Subaru. Not only did I fucking call it, but man, does this lead to one of the few moments in fiction that I've been moved by. Natsuki Subaru has to be one of the most compelling characters I've ever experienced, and these following chapters completely symbolize exactly what I love about Taipei's handling of Subaru's character. He is of course confused by the book containing his name, and I feel that this book confirms one of two things. One, Od Laguna is capable of taking in souls from other world lines, which feels far-fetched, or the far more likely option, that RBDing is pretty much going back in time, as if when it's time for his soul to be filtered by the Hall of Memories, something goes terribly wrong and it instead recreates the world and reincarnates him. He cracks open the book and views his first death, and then his next, and then his next, and then his next, looking for that catalyst that made the concept of Natsuki Subaru, but he couldn't find it. What made Subaru change? What made him capable of taking on the world? What made him stop being the worthless version of himself? He opens his eyes, and inside the Hall of Memories lies Natsuki Subaru looking back at him. He lashes out at himself and accuses the other him of actually being Luis. And if she really wants returned by death that badly, just take it. If the person who uses it is shit, then the results are shit. After some convincing that this is not Luis, Amnesia Subaru asks the other Subaru how he turned out this way. What made him such a dependable guy? The answer? Nothing. there was no catalyst. The only reason he became so amazing is because all he could do is get back up. Natsuki Subaru offers nothing else. He loves everyone, he wants to save everyone, and that is why he keeps pushing on, because it's all he can do. You are an amazing guy, Natsuki Subaru. The two Subarus have a discussion, informing one another of everything that they've missed out on, and they talk about what will happen when they merge. Subaru thanks himself for everything. Thank you for apologizing to Mom and Dad. Thank you for falling in love with Emilia, and thank you for saving everyone. They tell each other it'll be alright, as Subaru's time in the Hall of Memories comes to an end, leaving the quote-unquote real Subaru behind as he looks down and faces Luis, the person who loved nobody, and cannot understand the emotion of returning by death for the sake of someone you love. Luis was born into the Hall of Memories, being basically a manifestation of the soul of Gluttony. At first she thought she wanted to go outside, but she found it boring. She realized that she wanted to be happy, to experience a happy life. She tried and tried and tried experiencing people's lives, but nothing was clicking. Then she found Natsuki Subaru, someone who has experienced death and could restart his failures and desired his power of return by death. Luis split herself in two and merged with Subaru by temporarily giving him the gluttony factor. Luis was Nubaru, hence why the door said 4 instead of 3. However, she lacked that singular trait that Subaru has, the power to stand back up, the mental fortitude to endure such pain, the love to continue onwards through torment. Luis does not want to die, and to her, return by death is a power that can never be withstood without being a monster. Subaru looks on at Luis and how much his power has destroyed her and tells himself that wow, he really is amazing, and says to Luis that it's over. She loses. Release the names and memories of the people you have consumed. Luis begins to fight with her duplicate, and Subaru is forced out of the Hall of Memories. When he wakes back up in the library, he rushes to the Lei and Emilia fight, though Emilia has already had her name eaten again. Subaru, however, yells out, "It's okay, Emilia-tan. Subaru Natsuki is her one and only knight," as not only the characters, but the readers celebrate the return of our beloved moron. Subaru determines that just like back at the sanctuary, the shadow of Satella was swallowing up the tower because Return by Death had been leaked outside. But with Luis gone back in the hall, the shadow should be handled. Subaru decides to take Emilia and abandon Lei for now, and instead meet up with everyone, and he uses his Suba Navi, or Corleones, to do so. They pick up Bayako and Ram along the way, to which he reassures them the perfect Natsuki Subaru is back. He thinks to all of his current obstacles now that the shadow is gone. Number 1, Lei. Number 2, Reed. Number 3, the Witch Beasts. And number 4, finally, Shala. He deals out battle plans and takes on Ram's burdens, who assures him that she will not be taking it easy. The battles are set up. Ram versus Lei, Julius versus Reed, and Betty, Emilia, Melee, and Subaru versus Shala. Subaru uses his massive death experience to notice the subtle changes of a creature that indicate death, to detect when Shala is going to fire. Death is Subaru's arena. The fight ends up going down to the Sea of Sand, and Subaru reveals his grand plan for Emilia to make it to the third trial, succeed, and change the tower's systems. Emilia runs with Aridna, and they of course meet up with Julius, who is getting his ass kicked by Reed. Emilia continues on to the third trial as Aridna stays behind. He asks her if she's staying to watch, and she says yes, because you are Anastasia Hoshin's knight, and passes along a message to Julius from Subaru. Hurry your ass up so you can come help us. Julius is awestruck for a moment because the knight known as Natsuki Subaru is back. With newfound confidence and Aridna watching, Julius challenges Reed once more, and Reed gives him his name, a sign of respect in battle. Emilia makes it up the stairs and finds that she appears to be on top of the tower amidst the clouds, and she notices a divine being in front of her. Thou who hath reached the top of the tower, step forth through the first floor, almighty petitioner. We pan out to find that Volcanica, the divine dragon of Lugunica, awaits atop the Pleaides watchtower. This tower contains all of the people responsible for the seal that lies below, the supposed sage, the sword saint, and now the dragon. And then of course, Ram makes it to Lei, vowing his death for tearing apart Ram and Ram's sisterly love. Ram unleashes an all-out assault on Lei, and Lei uses Ram's memories to dodge and try to goad her, but the problem is, Ram's memories of Ram's capabilities are now outdated. As the battle of the two loving siblings begin, Lei commends Ram in a sense. She is a hornless Oni who probably faces unbearable pain daily, but she still pushes forward to be a hard worker despite it. We cut to Subaru as their trio attempts to stay alive on the ground outside, and Subaru notes that Emilia's connection to Corleones gets cut off as she ascends to the top floor. Emilia approaches the dragon, who simply repeats his prior words, and she speculates that due to his long life, he has undergone death of the spirit and gone senile, forgetting what his purpose is, just like a US politician. She touches the central pillar in the middle of the platform, and within the blink of an eye, almost gets instantly killed by Volcanica's tail. In response, she gets geared for battle by unleashing a new move, summoning ice soldiers in the form of Subaru, something Arc 6 does phenomenally phenomenally better than Arc 5 is its utilization of POV swapping. Arc 5 had the frequent issue of going from that interesting fight to something not so exciting, whereas every single conflict in Arc 6 has characters we care about and deeply interesting encounters, to the point where I never feel dissatisfied with a POV swap. We go back to Julius versus Reed, where Julius notes that there is no need to fear or mourn being forgotten, because even if nobody remembers who he still knows who he is. He is the false knight Julius Jaculius, who exists solely through his own vanity and experiences. Even if nobody remembers him, he still has the makings of a knight. He carries his sword with respect, and through this self-actualization, realizes that he should no longer cling onto the quasi-spirits that hold no memory of him, but he should instead reintroduce himself to them in all of his vain courtship, and reforms the contracts with the quasi-spirits. We come to understand that Ram has been severely limiting herself and her power due to the side effects she suffers from the use of her powers with no horn, but now, with Corleonis in effect, she releases some, not all, of her potential against Lei. When she unshackles some of her power, Subaru feels the backlash of this down on the sands below, fighting to stay conscious. He was also using Corleonis to absorb the drawbacks of Meilei's overuse of her divine protection, and his brain felt like it was going to pop out of his skull. Meilei finally corners Shala with some witch beasts, but much like many creatures, when cornered gets extremely aggravated and changes colors. The scorpion turns into a crimson scorpion, unleashing white lights in all directions, slaughtering the witch beast surrounding it, and critically wounding Meilei. Ram begins to lay the beat down on Lei, dislocating his arms and turning him to shreds. But Lei cleverly understands that she can't keep this up and begins to utilize shapeshifting to escape her grasp, not fleeing at random but instead targeting Rem. Ram was supposed to be the Oni god. The implications of this exactly I'm unsure of, but as the attacks on her village increase in casualties, the village elder told her to flee. Instead, she utilized her horn to try and save her people and went on a rampage, until we see the scene we've already witnessed from the past, where her horn gets cut off. This moment indeed serves as a bit of a relief for her. We cut back to the actual fight as Ram chases Lei through the tower and starts to feel some recoil from using her powers, as if Subaru had shifted some of the pain back. Lei feared utilizing the Eclipse moves in the case that he lost himself amidst the amalgamation of identities. But in a situation like this, lets loose and becomes a being of stolen identities. Lei turns the tables of the fight by using Rem's face and voice and completely rattles Ram's brain, as he begins to repay her for the damage she's given him. She gets kicked through a wall to find Rem and Patrochet attempting to flee, and before Lei meets up with them, begins utilizing synesthesia power she and Rem share as sisters to use the powers of Rem's horn, as the second coming of the Oni god is upon us. Emilia's ice soldiers hold down Volcanica's tail as she leaps to the top of the central pillar, and Volcanica uses his incredible dragon breath to turn everything on that floor to ash. As Volcanica down below spreads his wings to make his ascent, she attempts to reach the top, but he shakes the pillar she's on as she falls down onto his back. She closes her eyes in preparation for death, but instead thinks back to how Roswell and Puck flew, and that tickling Puck would interrupt him. She summons her ice Subarus again to tickle the divine dragon's white scale, but this kinda just pisses him off, and Emilia gets tossed off the dragon, luckily landing on the very top of the Pleaides watchtower. There lies a black monolith at the base of the central pillar, bearing 6 different male handprints and a female handprint, for a total of 7. Julius says that a knight should always embody an ideal, and he will be exactly that, because he calls himself a knight. Reed scoffs at him, telling Julius he will make him cry as he finally discards the chopsticks he has been using in favor of the sword of selection that has been sitting in the center of the examination room for this entire arc. Julius is impressed with himself for not losing immediately and chuckles to himself, maybe he'll challenge Reinhardt next. Julius utilizes all of his spirits to land just a single blow on Rita Estrella, and in exchange, Julius now suffers a scar under his left eye. Julius's spirits have upgraded from being just quasi-spirits to full-fledged spirits. We get some inner monologue from Meridna, as it is revealed to us that Anastasia not taking back the body means she gets to remain in her own ode, or her own world essentially, where the effects of something like gluttony cannot affect her, and she cannot forget Julius. But still, Aridna and Anastasia complete their body swap, and Anna takes back the body, and Julius hears the most encouraging words he could before the swap is complete. Julius, go, my knight, which kicks him into overdrive, as he utilizes all of his spirits in one final blow. Roy's body could not contain Reed's spirit, allowing Julius's final attack to overwhelm the weakened Sword Saint as Reed cracks apart. Roy's form comes back as he collapses to the ground, barely alive, and Anastasia approaches Julius as they have to reintroduce themselves again. For myself personally, the conclusion to the Aridna or Anastasia plotline feels super underbaked. It was a character conflict that was pretty much essential in kicking off Arc 6, as she knew the path of the tower, and for it to conclude so suddenly makes it feel like Aridna didn't really serve much of a purpose beyond that, and throwing shade at Subaru, of course. Sort of felt like Taipei wasn't exactly sure how to conclude this, so he just said, fuck it, and wrapped it up so we can get to the more interesting stuff. The narration reveals that Roswell's overarching plan was to have Ram and Rem form a singular Oni in order to kill the dragon, which unless it was stated in the novels before this, I was not aware of. Ram stands tall using an Oni horn and allows Lei 3 more hits on her. She is so fucking raw, and of course, counterattacks all 3 of his attempts and destroys his so-called unbreakable body. Ram says she thought of using synesthesia because of Subaru's use of his authority, theorizing that it links the Od of both people to experience the same things. Subaru's, however, is probably only a one-way link. He could theoretically share it with others, but he is a fool who would refuse to do so. Ram had always hated the natural Oni instincts that lie within as a result of having a horn, so she finds this situation quite ironic. Experiencing even 50% of her power, she's glad she lost it. She fears what she would have done or how she would have acted in different situations given the natural inclinations of an Oni. Lei attempts to flee again and wonders if he ever actually had a gourmet meal after experiencing the one-of-a-kind existence known as Ram. As he attempts to escape, Ram copies one of Lei's techniques, utilizing invisible wind blades as Lei's head falls off his shoulders. Victory for Ram. This battle is hands down my favorite of the entire arc. A fight between 2 people who care deeply about their siblings, as they are both forced to look in the mirror and examine the relationships they hold with their siblings. Lei manifests his genuine love and admiration for his sibling by physically morphing into Rem, as he uses Rem's memories and feelings to tear into Ram. But Lei is of course no perfect sibling, as Louise also holds sort of a disdain for her siblings. Despite this being Lei at his peak, even having the narration announce that a monster was born in the Sea of Sands on this day, he is still beaten by Ram because he is willing to use his siblings when the going got tough, when Ram would never stoop so low. Julius versus Reed is probably my second favorite battle, as it stands as essentially the complete inverse of the aforementioned fight. 2 people fighting the exact opposite of each other. Reed, who doesn't care how he's perceived and wants to simply live life how he sees fit, and the excessively vain Julius, who prioritizes the optics and actualization of a knight over everything. Unlike the previous battle, Julius doesn't win because the way he lives his life is objectively more honorable or knightly or whatever you want to call it, but it serves as a reward for Julius accepting exactly who he is and who he desires to be. Cutting back to the actual story, Emilia is mortally wounded, and Subaru is of course trying to take some of her pain with Corleones. Contrary to what Ram said in the previous chapters, however, Subaru is not the same guy he was 15 seconds ago, as he unleashes a new facet of Corleones, second shift burden sharing, and shares some of Meily's pain with Bayako. Emilia stands atop the highest floor of the tower and thinks to herself that one of the handprints in the black monolith might just be hers. Volcanica begins to actually speak, and asks where are Flugel and Reed, and that Shala will be lonely if they don't say adieu when leaving, and mentions Farsail Lugunica, the 35th king of Lugunica who ruled for 400 years during the era of the Witch, the king who oversaw the forming of the covenant with Volcanica. He asks if Emilia is worried, and she says no. He iterates that if she needs anything, do not hesitate to let him know, as he will remove all of Satella's anxieties. This stuns Emilia, not simply because she was referred to as Satella, that is business as usual, but why would he refer to the name of the Witch of Envy with such gentleness? Upon asking that, a switch flips in Volcanica's brain, and he immediately goes for the kill on Satella. Yes, Satella, we must stop thee who hast become the Witch of Envy. On that day, I wish I hadn't hesitated. On that day, if I did not hesitate, then no one would have. There was clearly some event many, many years ago that spurred Satella on to take the Envy factor, which Satella's body was not capable of handling, splitting Satella and the Witch of Envy into 2. Subaru is on the back foot down below, as they try to use EMM and healing magic at the same time, and he considers busting out the unfinished 3rd spell until Julius intercepts the witch beast closing in on them, and uses his water spirit to heal Melee. Emilia is about to get killed by Volcanica's tail midair, but Ram rushes up and hits her with a gust of wind that propels her out of the attack. Volcanica looks down and sees what happens, and calls out to Patriche. Dude, what the fuck? If you were in my Discord when I was reading these chapters, you will know just how badly this moment absolutely fucking stunlocked me. I introduced the Patriche question. Why would Volcanica call it the Patriche? Scenario 1 in my mind is that Patriche has been around for 400 years and clings people with miasma, but this can't be true because Earth dragons only live for 100 years. Plus, why would Subaru name the dragon the same exact name that it had when Volcanica was active? Scenario 2 is that Subaru somehow goes back 400 years with Patriche, and perhaps his handprint is on the black monolith as well? This could be possible, but I'm not particularly fond of the time loop or time travel theories. Final scenario is that, since we don't know the limits of what Volcanica is capable of, perhaps he can view everything that happens within his domain, since his role is to protect Lugunica. So perhaps he is aware of Patriche, since he has an inherent link to the species he created, and how she is linked to Subaru maybe? To explain why he wouldn't know Emilia as well, she was the only person present that was gluttonied, and that's why he was calling her Satella, the same assumption Julius had. Let me know your theories down in the comments below, though. Emilia makes it back to the Black Monolith, thanks to the help of Ram, and puts her hand in the slot that seems just like hers. Volcanica begins to repeat his trial lines again, and asks Emilia her will. She says she wills everyone to get along, and suddenly down on the ground, a strong wind blows that clears the clouds above. Shala begins to writhe as if she were in agony. The final showdown begins, as Subaru wants to save Shala. Subaru comes up with a plan to use all that this stretch of the journey has given him, as he shares Millie's burden with someone you might not have expected, Gion, the ground dragon that accompanied them to the tower. It's not involuntary, of course, but implies that Gion wants to help Subaru right now. Melee could finally get enough strength to use her divine protection again, as witch beasts hold Shala down, and it's implied Melee gets power up here, but my stream chat couldn't agree. Julius slices off Shala's scorpion tail and legs, and she begins to turn back into her humanoid form. Subaru and Shala speak, and Shala keeps talking about how she loves her master, and how she loved waiting for him. in stark contrast to Beatrice, who she heavily paralleled. She loved the concept of that special person. She would have waited however long it took to see them. She would have cherished the passing moments with them, as she slowly turned to dust in Subaru's arms. He promised. Subaru promised to not just Shala as he fell off the tower, but to himself, that he would set out to save every single person involved. But he failed. Subaru could not save Shala. Subaru lost. Suddenly, a small red scorpion comes out of the sand, which Subaru grabs. The crimson coat of Shala's form, representing pure rage after being cornered, takes on a different form in this new being, because that was something that not even the span of 400 years could fade. Love. The narrative seems to be framing Shala's death as a temporary thing, but I don't expect a revival necessarily with Shala, as if that does happen, this good moment becomes not so good. Emilia says that the scorpion is purely a witch beast, said to not contain Shala's self at all. Emilia opens the doors and enters the tower, and the party remembers Emilia, but they do not remember Julius and Rem. Subaru thinks it is because they have taken Roy alive, but the party begins to disagree on killing Roy. Subaru wants to kill Roy to bring back the memories, the rest wants to keep him prisoner in hopes that they can get the memories back on their own, and fearing that if they kill him, they lose that chance forever. Subaru passes out from exhaustion, once again blaming the failures on himself, even though this was an unfortunate, immutable reality of fate. The party puts Subaru in the green room and goes to talk with Volcanica. Julius starts simping for one of the three heroes, but then immediately learns once again to stop romanticizing history because all three of these people fucking suck. Beatrice and Echidna reveal that Volcanica is not suffering from dementia per se, but that his spirit is empty. The significance of this is unknown. They speculate about taking blood from the dragons to solve the issues back at Pristella, but Beatrice interjects that the blood in the capital is from a dying dragon, which has the restorative capabilities. Emilia asks Volcanica if she can have some blood, but he's coked out of his mind, staring into the distance. They like to see where he's staring and see the great waterfall in the distance, as well as a special place. Subaru wakes up in the green room and has a conversation with Ram and Melee. Ram presents the hypothesis that names and memories need to be digested, hence why Emilia's name came back so fast, and hence why Julius and Ram still remain forgotten. Ram almost echoes the words of Emilia Subaru that is that and this is this, in the sense that she wants to forge a future with Rem rather than dwelling on what could have been. Subaru once again resorts to not relying on return by death, fearing the path that he had taken during this arc. Suddenly, a bright light flashes in the room that gradually gets dimmer, and Luis is revealed to be on the floor in the green room. This is a major issue, as previously the shadow was swallowing the tower because someone knew about return by death that wasn't supposed to, so naturally, Satella arrives, swallowing Subaru up in a black shadow as he fears where his respawn point is set to. Satella is love-bombing Subaru with I love yous, but the word is like a landmine to him. He accepts that he will have to redo, and starts to think about the logistics of resetting until Volcanica strikes Satella, and then nothing. Subaru opens his eyes, and he's not in the tower. He's not in the sea of sand below either, but he is in a land of grass. Alongside him is the manifestation of Luis, who is seemingly incapable of speaking, and of course, the sleeping Rem. He's so glad that she's safe and that he can stay with her. As he turns away to scout his surroundings, his arm is grabbed. He turns back to see Rem, slowly opening her eyes, and for the first time of this entire trip, he feels joy. All of Subaru's trials and tribulations have led to this moment. All of the pain, suffering, and deaths, his entire purpose of going to that damn tower, have all led to this moment. Who are you? Rem is awake, but she remembers not. This does not bother Subaru, however. She's awake. That is what matters. Subaru and Rem here at the end of Arc 6 are an inversion of identity. Subaru felt guilty for the objective perception people had of himself, and now with Rem containing no memories or experiences that make her, he clings on to his objective perception of Rem's identity. It's okay that she doesn't remember, because he does. Once again, here and now, he vowed to start a story with her from zero. Arc 6, without a shadow of a doubt, lived up to the hype that surrounds it. I've said previously that Arc 6 was a phase about memories, but I think that was too simplistic of an idea in hindsight. Arc 6 is an arc about identity, which of course includes memories as a facet, but it's much more nuanced than that. Masterful character work, and extremely well done utilization of its side characters, Emilia's progression, Ram's characterization, Bayako, Julius, Arena offering a more sinister POV on Subaru, the concept of self-identity, Subaru facing who he really is, the massive amount of mystery and intrigue added by this arc, the sort of present theme of never meet your heroes with all three of the great heroes falling flat once the party gets to know them, the absolutely lovely pacing after the first phase. There are very, very, very few things to dislike about Arc 6, and it stands among one of the greats and will likely maintain the position for ReZero's runtime. Arc 6 is something that I've wanted for a while. It is more or less a complete loss for our cast. Of course, Ram and Julius got to overcome some hurdles and defeat their antagonists, but every single objective the party came to this tower to do has not been met, minus Ram waking up, which comes with its own problems. The two complaints I have are fairly minor in the grand scope of the wonder that is Arc 6. Obviously, I was sort of let down by the Arena plot resolution. Like I said before, it felt half-baked and super rushed just to close out Arc 6, and other than that, I do wish that Arc 6 did more for Subaru, rather than spend most of its runtime retreading old ground. It also did this outside of Subaru's character, referencing the trials and stuff like that. I understood the purpose of it, but I'm now hoping that Arc 7 is spent doing something new with Subaru's character. My only other complaint for the arc as a whole is Phase 1. It was pretty rough pacing-wise, and made for a tough reading experience at times due to it, but everything that came after was outstanding. For expectations, I will now list all of them in the description, as dedicating writing, recording, and editing time to saying the same stuff over and over again is tiring. For changes though, I was completely wrong about why Louise was in Od Laguna. She pretty much spawned there. However, I was 100% correct with my other Louise predictions, that she will make it outside the hall and be kept alive. Pretty much none of the others changed. I have a lot of, not necessarily new expectations, but a lot of questions that I'll throw up on the board. Will there be heavy consequences due to Volcanica's missing spirit? Subaru was carefully kept away from Volcanica by the narrative for a reason, and I definitely feel like it's linked with the Patrasche comment. Why did Louise suddenly materialize in the physical form? In the web novel, it's as if she trades places with the Green Room healing spirit, but in the light novel, that doesn't happen, which is a pretty big difference. The party has been effectively cut off from all aspects of communication for 2 months, and now they might be scattered around the world. Will Lugunica be in the same state as when they left? I presume Arc 7 will be Subaru, Rem, and Louise in an unfamiliar land, trying to make the most of a bad situation. It's like the villain hunt that MHA never had, but I imagine it can't last super long, as without Beatrix, Subaru will literally die. The conversation about Subaru's powers has to be coming. He has an unseen hand ability, and now all of a sudden, after losing his memories, started taking burdens from people and shifting them around. They have to start asking questions, right? And finally, why can Subaru smell Miasma now? I'm not sure if I misread the events of that happening, but they were in the cave before and Subaru couldn't smell anything, but when he was on the bottom floor, he smelled a sweet smell. That's about it though. We have finally completed Arc 6, and it's on to some side stories to prepare for Arc 7. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for the funny YouTube algorithm. You can go down in the description below, you can follow me on Twitter, or alternatively, you can also join my Discord, where I live blog my thoughts as I read phases and stuff like that. We talk about My Hero Academia, ReZero, Jujutsu Kaisen, and stuff like that, so please make sure you come by and say hello. That's about it. See ya.